At 6 o'clock in the morning, on the 19th of February, 1942, more than 180 Japanese aircraft appeared over Darwin Harbour in a single coordinated strike, larger than the attack on Pearl Harbor barely 10 weeks earlier. By the time the planes left, the city's fuel supply lay in flames, and Australia's government had a serious problem. What they built underground in response still sits beneath Darwin's cliffs today, and most tourists walking the waterfront above it have no idea it's there. Lost Australia covers the parts of this country that never got a tidy resolution. Subscribe now and let us know in the comments if you knew this was under Darwin. Before that February morning, Darwin held 11 above-ground oil storage tanks on Stokes Hill, sitting in plain view, easily visible, and, as it turned out, easily targeted. The 19th of February raid, followed by further Japanese air attacks in March and June of the same year, destroyed 7 of those 11 tanks. It remains the largest single attack ever mounted by a foreign power on Australian soil, and it marked the beginning of a sustained campaign, more than 60 separate raids on northern Australia across the following 2 years. For a country that had never seriously imagined war reaching its own coastline, watching its fuel reserves burn in front of it was a genuine shock to the system. Fuel was not a minor logistical detail. Without a secure, continuous supply of oil, the ships couldn't patrol, the aircraft couldn't fly, and Darwin's entire function as a forward Allied base in the Pacific War was in jeopardy. The decision to go underground. The War Cabinet directed the Allied Works Council to investigate an underground alternative, and by November 1942, a plan had been approved. 8 so-called safe naval oil storage tunnels carved directly into the rock beneath Darwin's cliffs, designed to hold the city's fuel completely out of reach of enemy bombers. Construction began in May 1943, carried out by 400 men of the Civil Constructional Corps, largely by hand, using picks, shovels and pneumatic tools, working through flooding, engineering setbacks and Darwin's brutal wet season heat. Each completed tunnel measured 4.5 metres wide and over 5 metres high, horseshoe-shaped and lined with steel reinforced concrete, built to a scale that still impresses engineers examining them today. The project was ambitious enough that it never fully got there. Of the 8 tunnels originally planned, only 5 were completed, at a cost of around £220,000, equivalent to tens of millions of dollars today. And by the time they were finished, something had quietly happened that made the entire project almost beside the point. Built for a war that had already moved on. The threat that justified the tunnels in 1942 had, by the time construction wrapped up, largely passed. Not a single litre of oil was ever stored in them for the purpose they were built for. 400 men had spent the better part of 2 years hand carving reinforced concrete chambers into solid rock beneath an active war zone. And the tunnels sat finished and entirely empty. They did not stay empty forever, though what eventually filled them had nothing to do with the original war. In the early 1950s, during the Malayan emergency and the broader Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation, tunnels 5 and 6 were used to store jet fuel for RAF and RRAAF bombers, under contract to a local fuel distributor. That arrangement lasted roughly 3 years before ending in 1955, when one of the tunnels reportedly imploded and spilled fuel directly into Darwin Harbour. After that, the tunnels were decommissioned again. In the 1970s and 80s, the Darwin Fire Brigade found a new, considerably less dramatic use for the abandoned chambers, filling them deliberately with smoke to run training exercises for firefighters. What's actually down there now? For decades after that, the tunnels sat closed, unused, and largely forgotten by anyone outside the small circle who knew they existed. They weren't opened to the public until the 19th of February 1992, deliberately timed to mark the 50th anniversary of the original bombing that started the whole project. Today, tunnels 5 and 6 remain open, a 172-metre corridor of poster-sized photographs and interpretation boards walking visitors through the story of the raid, the labour, and the men who built it. The other 3 completed tunnels, along with the 3 that were never finished at all, remain sealed off from the public entirely. What sits inside those sealed sections has never been the subject of any publicised modern survey or excavation. They were built to hold 20,000 tonnes of oil that never arrived, sealed after a brief and improvised second life storing jet fuel and firefighting smoke, and then closed again. Unlike the 2 tunnels open for tourists, there is no public record of what condition the unopened chambers are actually in today, more than 80 years after 400 men carved them out of solid rock by hand. What this actually reveals: the Darwin tunnels are often framed as a simple wartime curiosity, an underground tour stop between the harbour and the waterfront shops. What they actually represent is something stranger: a massive, expensive, physically extraordinary engineering project built at genuine human cost that turned out to be almost entirely unnecessary the moment it was finished. 400 men worked round the clock through flooding and tropical heat to build a defence against a threat that had already moved past Darwin by the time the concrete set. It is a rare kind of historical site, one built entirely for a danger that never actually returned, standing today as a monument, less to what happened inside it, and more to how close the country came to needing it, and never quite did.